everybody, this is Scott Silverman. Welcome to Conversations with Commerce Next. These are short 20-minute conversations with digital retail leaders. And today we're talking to my friend Abhishek Dalmia, who's currently Managing Director and Partner at the Boston Consulting Group, or BCG. He's coming to us from Seattle, Washington, or Bellevue, Washington, I should say. And we're going to be talking about loyalty and retention, which is something that Abhishek has really been dedicating his career to, particularly as of late. So, and I think it's a really relevant topic, especially during these times when, e-commerce customers are flooding into brands and retailers who are all new, and the ideas for these retailers to retain them, and especially retain the best customers that are going to continue shopping with them for a long time. So let's start with some introductions. Abhishek, if you can, just say hello. I know we know each other pretty well. Actually, you were one of my clients many years ago when you were at Dell. But for those of you who haven't had the fortune of knowing you for as long as I have, help us understand a little bit about your background and what you're doing right now at BCG.
Yeah, no, thanks, Scott, first up, for having me on your, Commerce Next forum. Abhishek Dalmia, as you said, Managing Director, Partner, based out of the Seattle office for BCG. I focus a lot on consumer as an industry practice and focus a lot on digital and marketing as a functional practice. I've spent my last 20 years at the intersection of digital, predominantly in the e-commerce space, marketing, predominantly in the digital marketing space, and data and technology, especially in the space of marketing technology. I'm with BCG for last 3 years. Prior to that, I was global SVP for e-commerce and digital marketing for Lululemon. And then prior to that, I spent several years at Dell running their e-commerce business for consumer, as well as running their marketing organization for both consumer as well as SMB. So obviously, as you highlighted in this discussion, consumer retention, especially in the current day and age where the cost of acquisitions are going up so much, is an extremely important topic. And this is one area where we are seeing a lot of disruption happening across several clients of ours at BCG. So happy to be part of this discussion.
Yeah, well, let's just jump right into this conversation on loyalty, because I know you have a really strong point of view that so many brands and retailers are not doing it the right way. And they often end up rewarding a lot of customers with discounts and so on that really should be their best customers. And they're seeing a lot of one and dones, and it's not going the way it should be.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Scott. I'll make a bold statement that, to me, a classic earn and burn loyalty program is completely broken. And I'll say why, because a lot of those programs are built with a very rigid framework of consumers earning points and they redeeming those points, which quickly translates into a discounting program. What a lot of the consumer clients, brands, retailers don't realize is how is their consumer decile broken up in terms of their revenue generation. If you look at a broad portfolio of retailers and brands, top 10% of the customers drive anywhere between 50 to 60% of the revenue, right? So now when you think about a classic earn and burn program, which is extremely rigid, what that does is it immediately passes back a pool of margin dollars that they are already generating with this top 10% of the customers. So in effect, your loyalty program, even before it gets off the ground, becomes a margin drain to the P&L, right? And now when you think about the fundamental shift happening from a physical world to a digital world, especially from a commerce lens, and e-commerce businesses are already challenged to make money at the bottom line, having a margin drain to a loyalty program is just not a sustainable model, right? Two, there are a lot of businesses, especially when you think about sectors like apparel, a lot of customers, the frequency is extremely low, especially with a lot of customers who are in the second to the seventh decile. Now, that is a huge unlock as to how do you really move that median, up the value chain. And I think that's where your loyalty program needs to be something which is not solely focused on the top 10%, but really drives the change in the behavior across the entire customer landscape and moves customer up the life cycle. And I think that's where there's a huge opportunity for consumer players, especially brands and retailers, to rethink their loyalty program. They all talk about experiential loyalty, but I think they have still not realized that dream of moving away of a classic earn and burn program.
I mean, I think like a lot of things, in order to move forward and fix something, you need to understand why it's broken. And I'm curious, why you think these programs have evolved this way. Are they haven't caught up to the amount of data that retailers have, that these were programs that were established in a certain way, many years ago, and they haven't been challenged? Or, why do you think there so many of these programs are like this?
So I think there are a few key things which drives that behavior, right? Where one, I think it's just the level of maturity, right? There was a lot of focus on driving frequency, driving traffic, driving conversion. If you think about a classic retailer, they all are focused on comms and they focus on the traditional metrics of traffic conversion, AOV, right? There's still not a complete adoption of consumer centricity across these clients. So a lot of these people are still focused on just driving acquisition. What they don't realize is they need to have that direct relationship with the consumer. In order to drive that direct relationship with the consumer, the first ask from the board and from the management and from the CEOs is, we probably need a loyalty program to drive that direct connection with the consumer, right? And I think that's where the ask coming from the top quickly translates into a tactical execution of a loyalty program. And I think that's where there is a gap of understanding and a lack of consumer insights in the organization. What businesses need to adopt is truly understand their entire P&L and break that up in terms of how do they drive a higher percentage of their business coming in from known customers. In order to drive that behavior, you don't necessarily need to just launch a loyalty program. I'll give you an example of a retailer who had 2% capture rate at the store POS, right? They launched the program around e-receipts. And just by launching a program of e-receipts and backing that up with a wall of fame and a wall of fame for the store managers, they drove that 2% up to 75%. Now imagine in a retail environment, in an omni-channel environment where you have 75% business coming in from stores and 75% of those transactions are already captured with a known identity. Your e-commerce is already 100% captured with a known identity. Your overall business without a loyalty program have known customer base, right? Now you can harness the consumer insights, the behavior, the pattern, and you can start to build the consumer 360 to really activate that consumer. So you see, we didn't even talk about loyalty program by fixing some of the basic needs of the consumer hygiene, right? That needs to happen in the business. Likes of Netflix, likes of Amazon, start with adoption of consumer data. You have to subscribe, you have to log in, so they know everything. But that's not the case with the likes of, Under Armours of the world or likes of Lululemons of the world, right? So that I think is where it breaks apart. To your question, long answer short is, people think that in order to build an established relationship with the consumer, I need to have a very rigid or well-baked loyalty program. What they are missing is that probably could be the end state, but there are other ways to start establishing a direct connection with the consumer before you get to that.
Right. So it's just like a reframing of the way you view a loyalty program, and it's a way to have that direct connection with the customer. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving them points that they can redeem or something like that.
That's exactly right. I think the long answer short for this topic is, when you are thinking and focused on loyalty, don't focus on loyalty as a loyalty program.
Right.
Don't start to design an earn and burn program right off the bat. Think of a consumer life cycle. Think of a consumer journey. think of how you are going to build that authentic relationship with the consumer. Is it through a transactional point of interaction? Is it through a social point of interaction like events and other mediums? Or is it through other engagement of browse and others? At every stage, and this is where the disruption, as you see with CDPs of the world, which has become a really hot topic, the notion of understanding the transactional, the behavioral, and the contextual knowledge of the consumer is becoming very important, because you need to have an integrated view of the consumer. You need to know the customer, understand the customer, and then start engaging with them. That engagement can then have an element of earn and burn, but that's too far out of the value chain. People are jumping straight to that earn and burn before actually fixing this, knowing, understanding, and engaging with the consumer.
So the earn and burn programs, can you help, people understand what role they play and, or just even, like an example from a retailer, even without naming who they are, but that maybe they went through this step. They first, realized how to have the direct connection with the customers, and then they launched the earn and burn. I'm assuming you feel like there is a place for earn and burn. But so, how do you view that? Where is that place? And what does it accomplish?
Yeah, so I think there are three stages of the companies where they are right now. Some companies already started down this path of earn and burn, right? So there are a lot of players out there, you know them, I know them, where you spend $200 and you get 10% cash back, right? You get a $20 gift card. What that happens is, where it breaks apart, is the 10% of the customers who are driving 50% of the revenue, they were not getting anything back. Suddenly you took away 10% of their margin and gave them back to them as a cash offer, right? So for them, there is a challenge as to, how do they now decouple that existing program and move to a more profitable program in loyalty? So that's one stage. The second stage is people who are already having a membership program. So like Amazon Primes of the world, Costco's of the world, right? Where they already have a program, but they have never committed to anything going back to the consumer. So they are probably at the other end of the spectrum, where they already have that relationship, they already have a program going, and now they can actually start to go more surprise and delight route, give more tailored offers, and kind of give that. There's a stream in the middle where people are either trying to get into, or people are already here. If you think about Starbucks rewards program, Starbucks rewards is a great example where you have people who are part of the loyalty program. It's one of the most well-known loyalty program, but there is no fixed commitment that if you spend X, you get Y. It's completely personalized loyalty, right? So if you think about these three stages, I think brands, retailers need to start quickly as to which stage they are in. Some just don't have a loyalty program. For them, they should absolutely not start on the bucket one, which is like classic earn and burn. They have to decide whether we want to start with the bucket 2 or bucket 3, right? Which is a membership program or a loyalty program, yet have a gamification aspect to it, right? What program bucket 2 and bucket 3 does, Scott, is it moves the loyalty program from a margin drain to become more of a revenue generator. Because by having gamification, by having a personalized approach to loyalty, by having dedicated offers to the audience based on their stage of the life cycle. So if Scott is engaging with me, I will still surprise and delight, but I might not give him 50% off on the next offer. But if Abhishek is not engaging with me, to win him back, I might give him an extra points, or extra incentives to get him engaged back into the brand, right? That just allows me to control, and the onus then becomes on me to drive the engagement versus on the brand to actually drive the engagement. So I think, again, long answer short, I think the brands and the retailers need to start quickly assessing where they are in their journey. Before they jump on the classic earn and burn program, they need to take some steps around understanding their consumer data, understanding what relationship they have, how authentic is that relationship, build the foundation of consumer 360, and then get into one of the routes of either a membership program or a gamified loyalty program versus a classic earn and burn loyalty program.
So much of you've been talking about is around better understanding your customers, understanding their preferences, having data about them. you know, when you work with clients, what kind of technology foundation do they need? I mean, do you find that they're often they're not equipped with the right technology to have the access to data that they need to be able to do this in the right way? And what are some of the big upgrades that you think are worth looking at?
So there are a couple of things I would share there, right? One, obviously, you see this every day, right? Marketing technology is the biggest buzzword, right? Everybody talks about it. It's one of the priority items for every CMO and every CIO. And within that, obviously, there are large cloud players like Salesforce and Adobe's of the world who have also now announced that they're going to focus on Consumer 360 and CDPs. CDP is becoming a big terminology as well in terms of driving that Consumer 360 and bringing that to life, connecting the consumer IDs from different parts of the touch points, right? And then there are other activation channels. I think where people are still struggling, especially omni-channel retailers and brands, is truly getting to a one unified view of the consumer, right? And they still are focusing only on the transactional side of the data. Now imagine an apparel player who has 70% of the customers who only transact once. There is only so much juice that you can extract from that one transaction. Unless you start to harness the power of the behavioral transaction and in a real-time moment, there is no way you will be able to action on it and engage with that consumer in a meaningful way, right? And I think that's where we have to humanize the technology aspect. When we are thinking about these marketing technology capabilities, yes, there is a technology gap, but I think most of the people are just jumping on bringing technologies into their environment versus actually thinking through what use cases are we going to unlock, right? So what is a huge opportunity, I think, in my mind, even before technology, even before data, is for businesses to define what consumer-centric use cases will I actually bring to life? How will I focus on building an authentic relationship with the consumer? And most importantly, we talk a lot about data and technology. I always tell people that 70% of the problem is your own operating model. How do I really start to break down my organizational silos so that capabilities that I'm building from a technology perspective, from a data perspective, are fully leveraged within my organization? Store versus e-commerce, marketing versus brand, product versus business. So I think those three pieces to me are more important than just the technology. In technology, yes, there are huge gaps, but I feel like over the last 2 years, people have started to address those gaps. People are starting to bring in technologies. CDP is one topic which I'm hearing more and more with every retailer either already implemented a CDP or is thinking of implementing a CDP. The confusion there is like there are a lot of players out there who call themselves CDP, but only few of them actually address the needs of the CDP.
Well, there's like so much we could kind of different, avenues we could go down on the things that you've been saying. But I do want to make sure I'm being respectful of your time. Maybe just to wrap up, talk about how, is this the realm of the very large organizations, or, how do smaller organizations think about this? Do you feel like it is within reach of a smaller organization? Maybe they're, a 50 million, $100 million, startup, DTC, someone like that. Do you think that they can take a lot of what you're saying and apply it and build some of these in-house, or not necessarily in-house, but move in this direction and take on this strategy?
I 100% believe that it is in the realms of even 50 million, $100 million organizations, right? I think one of the last comments I would make for either smaller or larger organization, which is a huge opportunity, is don't just think of consumer-centric approach from a marketing standpoint. Consumer centricity needs to be something that needs to be thought across the organization. I'll give you an example of that, where if you think about any retailer, whether big or small, they always plan their AOP, annual operating plan, or next 5-year plan based on where the growth is going to come by product, where the growth is going to come by region, or where the growth is going to come by channel, whether e-commerce or stores or wholesale. Very few players can actually right off the bat articulate that if my next year target is 20% growth, 6% of that is going to come by acquiring 3 million more customers next year, which are net new to my brand. 12% of that is going to come in by reducing my churn rate from 75% to 72%. And then the balance 2 or 3% is going to come in by improving the frequency by one more transaction for my top 10% of the customers. None of the guys today are able to easily articulate their P&L based on consumer life cycle. If we can start to pivot the thinking to that, it then starts to drive the focus on where you need to spend on which stage of the consumer life cycle. It then starts to drive the discussion on what capabilities, what organization, and what talent I need in the organization. And then it starts to drive the behavior, whether I need a loyalty program or I don't need a loyalty program. And how do I drive a deeper relationship with the consumer?
Wow, this is great. I think this is such helpful information. I think you helped everybody, understand that, there's a different way of thinking about loyalty and retention, and it's not starting with the earn and burn, that there is some ways to approach, your technology infrastructure that I think often can feel overwhelming, or you feel like you don't have the right technology and a way to address that. And the fact that, it's a strategic organizational point of view that in strategy that you need to embrace, and organizations of all sizes can do that. So thank you so much, Abhishek, for taking some time to kind of share your thoughts on loyalty and retention. This is great information. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. Look forward to catching up soon.
All right, sounds great.